Hi y'all, welcome to Balance with Bree. So I'm happy to provide y'all with an update on my debt-free journey where I am aggressively paying off 8 loans. Okay, now that's 4 personal loans, 1 auto loan, 2 student loans, and a mortgage with a grand total of $253,311. Now that does include my mortgage, which I do share that burden with my husband. So if you want to know my personal solo debt minus the house, that number is $84,311. Sheesh. If we're talking about consumer debt only, right, not including my student loans, not including my mortgage, we're sitting at $42,426. Now, in my debt confessions video, if you have not watched it, please do, because I talk a little bit about how I got into this debt. But I projected it taking me about 4 years to pay the consumer debt alone, which is just that $42,426. Not even touching the $40,000 of my student loans. And I plan to mostly use the snowball method, which actually, paying it off, like my consumer debt, I would actually be paying it off 3 times faster than it took me to finish my DMP. And if you saw my debt confessions video, you know that I had a debt management plan or DMP prior to this current journey that was about $17,000 of consumer debt. And I made a simple payment of about $400, and it took me 4 years to pay that off. So my current payoff plan is to take that same $400 DMP payment that I was making these last 4 years and put it towards my debt like it's rent due tomorrow. Okay, so I'm basically taking the same amount of time to pay off this $42,000 as it did to pay off that $17,000. Isn't that crazy? I mean, it worked for me at the time. You know, the DMP, I'm not mad at it at all. It truly helped me. It just really, blows my mind. So like I mentioned, I'm loosely utilizing the snowball method. So it isn't 100% snowball, because the snowball method solely relies on tackling the smallest balance. And for me, it's kind of a combination of the snowball and avalanche, which I might actually also be the debt priority method, or it might just mainly be the debt priority method, but a lot of people are not too familiar with that. But I am planning to pay certain debts depending on how high or low the interest is, regardless of its balance. So that's kind of where like the avalanche method comes in, and so does the snowball. For instance, in my last video, I talked about how I wanted to pay off Best Egg 2 first, which is not the lowest balance, but it is the highest interest because it has that 25.99%. So I wanted to tackle it first since it's fairly close to the lowest balance. Also, you can see I have one debt with 0 interest, which is the My Synchrony. And so the original plan was to ignore that one, even though it has a lower balance, I guess you could say, compared to these other debts. And I have it listed kind of in the middle of all these other debts. And then I would just knock it out later because there's other interests that are, other loans, that are gaining higher interest. But I'll talk about that momentarily because I do have an update on that. So now enough recap. Let's jump right into this update. Okay, so this is how I kind of started off with you guys last month. Okay, so for my Best Egg 2 loan, I'm actually gonna turn to this one, but I'm gonna block this out just so we can kind of focus together here. So my Best Egg 2 loan, I am proud to announce that I have a 0 balance. I know, right? My husband and I were able to receive a property tax relief benefit that I just threw completely at my debt. And so I got that canceled right out about a week after that video that I took, which was not anticipated at all. And I was able to eliminate the Best Egg number 1 loan as well. Hey. Let's go. So very happy about that. So if you can see from that first video, this side by side here, hopefully you guys can see, I was able to knock out that 2125 and that 1666 and avoid these 2 payments of $270 every month. How wonderful is that? Okay. The next one is Splash, which is also a loan. This was for my porch, to renovate my porch. I originally had it being paid off in 15 months because my focus was, the best egg loans. But now that those two are eliminated, I will now be paying this off aggressively. The minimum payment is only $221. And actually, I got this loan earlier this year. I believe it's like a 3-year loan. But my plan is to actually throw $900. Yeah, that's not a typo. Before you say that's unreasonable, I can't relate to this. I don't have those funds. How is this lady doing this? She thinks other people could do this. I promise you, if you're in debt, you probably can, and you didn't even realize it, because I just realized how much I've been spending in debt like this whole time. So where am I getting this number from? So I'm basically following the snowball method in this way, because I'm taking what I was paying and I'm adding it to this payment. So I'm including that $270 from the best egg loan, and that was the $169 and the $101, and I'm taking the current minimum payment for this splash loan, which was $221. And then I'm also utilizing that $400 payment for my DMP. Remember, I said I just finished paying that DMP and I'm putting it towards my debt. So that's also included in here. So adding all those up totals to about $890. So I'm actually rounding it up to $900, which is crazy. I've literally been paying $900 this whole time just for these couple of loans. Like, what in the world? Insane. And I clearly have more debt. So I've been paying a whole lot more than that. But so now that I'm able to put this $900, I'm allocating those funds to this debt alone. I'm going to knock it out. And in doing so, this debt should be eliminated by May 2026, about 6 months. And originally, it would have been paid off January 2028. So I'm shaving a little more than 2 years right off. Woohoo. All right, so now the next one is Nissan. So if I paid, which actually I was able to get the exact amount of Nissan. I think originally I had just estimated $30,000. I was actually able to see what the exact balance was. So it's $29,284. If I pay the minimum payment, which is $534, it's going to be paid off in almost six years, I think, by September 2031. This was a car I purchased post-pandemic, which was crazy high in terms of price. It is a 2022 Nissan Rogue. And my plan was to tackle it, after the first 3 loans are paid off. But I have kind of changed gears a little bit. I actually want to pay off my student loans, just because I know in my last video, I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but I discovered that my student loans are accruing interest. If you have student loans, you probably realize that too. So my student loans have not accrued any interest for a few years now. It was all on forbearance, and then back in August we were notified it's going to start accruing. You don't need to make a minimum payment, but you're going to start getting more money on top of whatever you owe. They basically want to torture us. So I did originally want to ignore my student loans until I was ready to pay it, but since the interest is accruing, it is scaring me. So I'll come back to talking about Nissan and what the plan is for that after I talk about my student loans and my synchrony and everything. Okay, so we'll come back to Nissan, but just know this is the minimum, and this is the current balance. So my synchrony. So like I said, I am happy to have paid off these 2 best egg loans very quickly. It was meant to happen because there have also been some setbacks. Now, I discovered that my synchrony loan, which had 0 interest, is only 0 interest for a limited time. I thought it was until the amount is paid. That's what I originally thought. And then I discovered that it actually expires in May 2026. So if I don't pay it off this balance in full by May 2026, I will have to pay the deferred interest, which is about $500 at this time. So now I have to aggressively pay down this amount in about 6 months. So instead of the $75 payment, which is the current minimum, quote unquote, to pay for my synchrony, I now have to aggressively pay this down as well to avoid that deferred interest, which is completely my fault. I was not paying attention. I was comfortable. I was not taking advantage of the opportunity, but best believe I am now. So I'm also happy to be getting rid of this loan a little bit quicker, because I was just going to pay 75 for like however long it took, which probably would have been a couple years, to be honest, because this is a pretty big amount for just paying 75. So it's kind of putting me in a chokehold, but that's okay. We gonna pay it. We gonna pay it. So that's my plan for my synchrony. The number I calculated was just like how long. It's basically 2103 divided by 6 months, and that's where I got that number from. So I basically have to aggressively pay that down too, unfortunately, but that's okay. So my student loans, like I mentioned, I do want to pay off my student loans first before I jump into tackling my car loan. So again, if you're asking yourself why is she choosing to pay the student loans versus Nissan has a higher interest rate and a higher minimum payment. Let me explain. So my student loans are accruing interest the longer I take to pay. It actually grows about $175 every month, which you can see here. I actually put the minimums there. So this one accrues about $100 every month, and this one about $70, just in interest alone, not even to tackle any of the actual balance. Okay, so it's accruing that every single month. And my car loan, it's already set in stone, all right? It already has the interest already calculated into this balance. It's not gonna be any more than this amount here, but I can't say the same for my student loans. Okay, so that's why if you're asking yourself, higher interest, higher payment, why is she not tackling that first? That's why the student loans are really, scaring me, how rapidly it's increasing. I mean, it started in August, we're in November, and I've already added on a couple, $100 onto that balance. So it's increasing every month. So it's a little bit scary. So I am gonna tackle these first, and put, at this time, I'm just gonna pay the minimum until I can knock out and free up some funds. So until I can knock out, my synchrony, maybe even Splash, I won't really increase the payment, but I will be paying at least the interest. Okay, so once I can knock out that $900 Splash payment, that $437, my synchrony payment, I will have about, by that logic, I will have about $1,337, $1,337 with these two amounts, well, this one and this one added up, to be able to kind of throw at my student loans to pay it off, aggressively. So we'll see. I don't want to be indebted to my student loans for all eternity. With this interest, that's what it's kind of looking like. So with this method, if by the time I finish Splash and my synchrony and I throw that same amount at the student loans, it will actually only take about 3.5 years to pay off, which I project by August 2029, this will all be paid off. So for now, Nissan is getting the $534 minimum, and student loans are getting only the interest only. But as soon as Splash and my synchrony free up some funds, then I'm tackling these two next, and then I'm going to tackle Nissan. What a month. So that is my update for the month of November. And if actually you look at these two side by side, you can see the actual overall debt total has decreased by some. So if we're looking at the debt total, we went from 253 to 247. If you're looking at just my personal solo debt, from 84,311 to 77,981, decreased by $6,330, my total solo debt. And then my consumer debt, right, without the mortgage, without the student loans, decreased by $6,410. That is super wild. All right, so this is only 1 month into the debt-free journey. So please join me next time for month 2's update. And please let me know if there's like any content you would like me to cover or that you would like to see. Please subscribe. And as always, stay balanced.